All right, looks like we are recording, and we have Taylor Ruth here from University of Nebraska-Lincoln, who is going to help us out with, give us kind of an update of the Comm CDE, and this is for the year 2022. All right, Taylor, if you want to take it away.
Thank you. I am going to go ahead and share my screen because I do have a couple of slides and can hopefully walk through some resources. I know right now we only have Colby as the only teacher. So Colby, if you have questions, feel free to stop me at any point and ask those. But if you're watching on recording, I hope this is still helpful. So what we're going to talk about today is just an overview of the event. Since this is the first time we've done the event in person since we've redone the rules from 2020, just want to make sure we understand how this is going to run. Also talk about some helpful resources to help prepare for the event on April 6th. I know everybody has turned in their media plans already, but I do want to talk about some common issues that we see with the media plan when it's submitted. So hopefully next year you can take this feedback or even incorporate some of this feedback for your presentations if it's relevant to your team, and then open it up to, I'm sure Colby has tons of questions that she can ask for the group. So for the CDE, just as a reminder, we do have a team competition and now an individual competition. So this is the first time in person we're able to do the individual score too, which is super exciting. So for the team score, it's 500 points total. 200 points are coming from the media plans, which have already been submitted and sent out to our judges. We have some really great judges who are both faculty here at UNL, as well as communication specialists at UNL and communication specialists at different commodity organizations across the state of Nebraska. So super excited for them to provide feedback for our students. Students will also engage in a media plan presentation, which is worth 100 points of the total team score. And then each student, so each team has 4 students, hopefully. Each student is going to take a communications quiz worth 25 points and do an editing exercise. So AP style and grammar is what we'll be doing for that exercise, worth 25 points. So times 4 is 100. So there's 100 points from the communications quiz, as well as 100 points from the editing exercise, for that total of 500 points. So that's how the teams will be scored. Individuals will also be scored based off of their points for the communications quiz and the editing exercise, out of 50 points total. And those quizzes and exercises will just be 25 questions, so 1 point per question. So that is the basic setup for the CDE for the how we're going to be scoring the points. Let's look here. For the schedule, and I think this is live now on the website. Is that correct, Matt? Perfect. So it is live on the website. So we pushed things up a little bit earlier this year, just so that way ag issues can hopefully wrap up before the middle of the night. So we're starting at 8:30 a.m. for check-in. This is all in the East Campus Union on the 2nd floor. We've reserved the Arbor Suite. We actually have 18 teams this year, so there's maybe about 74 students. So we're super excited to welcome everybody here. So please make sure you arrive a little bit early. The quizzes and the editing exercises are going to be on students' laptops. So students will need to make sure they bring their laptop charged and ready to go and get there early so that way they can set up their guest Wi-Fi account for UNL. Matt, I'm not sure if you have any specific information that'd be relevant to share about that. We just want to make sure they get there early so they can get that set up. Is there anything else with that they need to know?
You bet. I think probably the only other danger is if you're using school devices and your tech coordinator locks down so they can only connect to like school Wi-Fi networks, they're going to have to release those privileges so they can connect to outside networks like the UNL Wi-Fi. So I would just, if you're using school devices, check with your school coordinator, let them know what's happening, and that way they can make a call if they need to adjust anything. The backup plan is if a student needs to use her or his like hotspot from their cell phone, that's fine too. And they can test that even before leaving home to come to Lincoln to make sure that they can connect to that Wi-Fi hotspot. So that'd be a backup plan. Otherwise, yeah, we would like them to come with fully charged laptops or Chromebooks.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So we will get started at 9 a.m. We'll do a short welcome and event overview to make sure everybody's on the same page. And then at 9:15, we'll start that editing exercise and communication quiz. The students will be provided a link to start the quiz. Each quiz they'll have 15 minutes for. So 25 questions, 15 minutes for them to work through. Once they finish one quiz, they can just start the next quiz and that timer will start over again. So they don't have to sit there and wait for the next one to start. So that will hopefully wrap up by 9:45. We'll have a short break and then we'll have the media plan presentations starting at 10 a.m. And those are going to run from 10 a.m. to 1:15 p.m. We have 3 rooms scheduled to go simultaneously for the presentations, just so we're not there literally all day. So you can see kind of our setup that we have going on here. And these are going to be right next to the Arbor Suite where we're meeting at first. During this time, students are welcome to stay in the Arbor Suite if they want, but if your presentation isn't until like 12:15 or 12:45, you're welcome to leave and come back. We just ask that you check back in at least 15 minutes before your presentation time. So as a reminder for the presentations, we've got 30 minutes blocked off for each group. So you'll have about 5 minutes set aside for any type of setup that you might have and 5 minutes for teardown. If you're bringing any types of props or if you need to bring anything specific with you to showcase anything that you've created as part of your media plan, you'll have 12 minutes to present and then 5 minutes for questions and answer, which I'm pretty sure adds up to less than 30 minutes. We got a little bit of wiggle room there. So just keep in mind 5 minutes for setup, 5 minutes for teardown. So you don't want to have anything super complicated with those things. As far as media equipment in these suites, we will have a PC as well as a TV screen for those presentations. I need to double check and confirm. The rooms should all have speakers in them though, if you have like a video that you're wanting to show. However, I have found that things can go wrong very easily. I'm sure you've experienced this too. So just have your students be prepared. If the audio can't work, how do you work through that? Do you continue to show the video? What would you do in that situation? I would also recommend the teams go ahead and put their PowerPoint onto a flash drive that they bring with them, so that way we can upload it directly to the computer. If you get there early enough, we can even kind of set it up before we even get to the presentation, if that would be easiest. So just a couple of things to think about with that. So you can see we've got those 3 suites going on at the same time. We've got 6 different judges that we've got set up, so super excited for y'all to get to interact with those judges. And there'll be a little break for them too. We don't want the judges too tired, basically. As far as helpful resources, I know we've kind of done a version of this in the past that was online. This is our first time in person. So I just want to make sure everybody knows where our practice quizzes are in case you want to use these for your students. So these are all on the Nebraska Comm CDE website. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up really quick. So if you come to our website that we have here and scroll down to our CDE study materials, it will take you to this lovely Google Drive that we have. There's a communications quiz and editing exercise question bank in here that you can use for your students to help them prepare for these exercises that we have. The bolded points in here are the correct answers. So there's some practice quizzes in there. Same thing with the editing exercise that we have over here. So these would be good things to have your students kind of work through, especially for the AP style editing exercise. There's only so many questions I can ask, so it's probably a safe bet that there will be just different versions of these questions with different numbers or different examples that are used. So this would be a good one for them to take a look at. Also, that would be helpful. This last link over here takes you to the National FFA online resources, which is where I take a lot of my information for the CDE anyways. So this has some example plans, this first link. This second link down here will take you to some additional editing exercises and communication quizzes from the past several years that they have here. So if you click on any of these years to open up, you can see some different samples that they have. But if you go to the editing and communication quizzes, you can see that they have, this is the editing quiz they did for nationals in 2021. You'll see they're somewhat similar to the questions that I provided as well. And there is a key in this folder too. So they've got these backed up from 2016, it looked like. So I would definitely recommend checking these out too as you're preparing your students. And just under resources in general, they have a lot of great kind of tips. So this agricultural communications in the classroom PDF, this guidebook, is where a lot of the communication quiz questions will come from as well. I realize this is very long, but you can also kind of approach those questions as a question bank for those. And they're only worth, it's a small percentage of those points, but these are some really helpful resources that I will be using to help create the questions. So I would recommend to check those out. Are there any questions about those resources? Okay. Some of the feedback I want to talk about with the media plan, and like I said, these are things you could incorporate for next year, but you could also even incorporate these for your presentation because the presentation is judged independently from the plan. We have, I think, 2 judges who will be judging both, but there will be new judges for the presentation. So these are just some things to think about and consider as you prepare. So issues that we see have to do with having SMART objectives in the plan, being really specific about the audience, having an appropriate evaluation for the media plan, and then just generally meeting the requirements for the plan too, is where some kind of easy points can be lost. So I'm just going to kind of walk through creating a social media strategy, creating a general media strategy. So as you're working on developing a plan, these are kind of the steps that I always tell my students to walk through. So first and foremost, you have to define the goal of your media plan. We provide you the goal as part of the scenario, so that work is already done for you, which is kind of nice. And then you kind of need to walk through the rest of these steps. So once you have your goal, you need to establish your metrics and your desired outcomes with your objectives, and also identify your audience, so who you are trying to reach with this. Also making sure we're selecting media based off of the goals and our audiences, develop key messaging, which is part of the media plan, and then measure those results through evaluation. So when we're talking about our goal versus objectives, so goals are kind of your long-term, big picture, what you're trying to accomplish. So FFA kind of lines that out for us, and we have that kind of outline too for the future, saying you've been approached by this chapter to promote a local FFA member to tell a local FFA story. So that's kind of the goal. But then you have to establish what are the objectives or these small steps that we can take to help us actually reach that goal. So when you're developing, oh, these are just some goal examples too, but we provide those to you, so don't worry about that. So when you're creating your objectives, and the ones I'm going to show you right now are tied specifically to social media, just as we see so many social media objectives, are those SMART objectives. I'm sure you've heard this acronym before, but making sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So what I see often with my students and sometimes these plans is we want to impact attitudes about beef. So when I look at this objective, it's not really any of these things, because I can't tell if impact is like negative, or is it negative impact, positive impact? It's not super specific. It's not really time-bound either. I don't really know how I would measure that. So it might be a little better is to say, I want to increase engagement on Facebook posts about beef product or beef production in Nebraska, but I still don't really know increase by how much or what that time frame looks like. So it would be best, what I always tell my students, is something like increase engagement on Facebook posts by 25% during the first week of the campaign. That's what we're looking for with these objectives, for them to be super specific, make sure they're measurable, make sure there's some type of number in there to know when we actually met that objective too. So something to consider in the future or for your presentation, making sure we have those SMART objectives. Also, when we're talking about our audience, I would encourage you to work with your students to think about your audience being beyond just the public and being really specific with who you're trying to target. That also makes the communication easier if you have a really specific person you're trying to target and communicate with. And when you break down your target audience, breaking it down into demographics and psychographics is how I would recommend you do this as well. So demographics are things that are going to be really easy for us to measure and to see. So something like age, race, gender, income, whether or not their parents have kids living in the household. Psychographics, though, are going to be just as important when you're developing these media plans, but they're just a little harder to measure. So these are going to be like their values, their religion, past experiences, beliefs, because these things also influence how they engage with the media, how they behave based off of what they see. So we have to consider these things too. So some examples, if you're doing your target audience and said, our target audience is young mothers, these are going to be females 20 to 29 with at least a high school degree and their parents. Psychographics, maybe they're concerned for family, they value nutrition and health, and enjoy being outdoors and engage, like doing yoga. So that would be a really good way to describe an audience. Another audience could be Midwest dads, so like male, 45 to 60, they're also a parent. They enjoy grilling and ice fishing. They want to watch tornadoes go by. They're storm chasers, and they're highly religious. So the more descriptive you can get with your audience analysis, the more specific you can get with your media plan too, and the more impactful it will be. So once you have your target audience, you're then able to choose those platforms where they're the most active. So those young mothers, you're probably going to be able to communicate with more on Instagram versus these like Midwest dads might be more on Facebook. So that can help you choose those platforms. You can also start to create messaging really tailored to them and the things they care about, and select images that are going to resonate with that audience, specifically when you're thinking about the social media strategy. So what types of pictures should you post that these two groups would care about? So the young moms are probably going to be attracted more to pictures of like cute little kids, where the dads are going to be like, oh, cool, look, somebody's grilling out some steak right now. And those pictures might catch their attention instead. So just thinking, how does this align with my audience? Now, evaluation, this is where some of my judges tell me some of the plans start to lose focus at this point. So evaluation does not need to be super complicated. Evaluation needs to just really directly address those objectives. So if we have those SMART objectives from the beginning that are going to be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, it's going to be really easy to measure it and tell if we succeeded or if we didn't succeed. So for that one that we said earlier, increase engagement on Facebook posts by 25% the first week of the campaign, all we have to do to evaluate that objective is look at our Facebook analytics and see, did we increase engagement? So you'd have to have your first number and your final number, but we're just seeing, did we actually meet that objective? If you had an objective that was increase awareness of local FFA chapter by 10% during the campaign month, you could send out a survey in your community before and after to see how awareness is impacted. You might do something about an event, seeing you want at least 30 people to register for this event by a specific date. You just need to look at the registration numbers for it. So we don't need to overthink our evaluation, just make sure it's meeting the objectives that we already created. And if those objectives are measurable, you'll be able to do that. So just think about how those connect. And then just general requirements, just refer to pages 7 through 9 in the handbook. It gives it really specifics as far as how many pages each section should be, what should be included. The big things though, since things changed in 2021, don't forget to include the appendices and examples. So each of our plans now require a web design piece, a video, a journalistic writing example, and an opinion writing example. So we changed things from the past the way it used to be. It used to be students, one person from each team did each of these activities the day of the event, much like they do at nationals. We took that out because we had some issues with just being able to do video editing on campus. It was just a little bit challenging logistics-wise. And at the national competition, students still have to do what we're doing for our Nebraska competition too, but we still wanted to make sure students had the opportunity to practice these skills. So just make sure that we have those as part of the media plan too, and those don't count towards the total page requirements for the media plan. There is a social media strategy that's required as part of the plan now too. So you might want to add that to the appendix if you have any example posts you want to include. But if you look in the appendix of the handbook, there are some details and some directions for how to do all of these different communication pieces that I hope you still find helpful for that. So just making sure we meet those requirements is going to help us not lose small points as well. So that is all that I have. Just kind of wanted to run through those basic requirements and what we were doing the day of the event, as well as hit on some of the maybe opportunities for growth for those media plans. But do you have any questions I can answer for you? No. Do you have
Who's a
any
brand
questions?
new teacher who started in January, and so she's just diving into this. So thanks, Colby, for joining and having a team right out of the gate.
That's
starting-
impressive.
Yeah.
That's super impressive.
Taylor, for a new teacher, is there any really big things that stand up, and what sets one team apart from the other? Now, you've talked about these small little deductions that add up.
Honestly, just make sure you have read the what the context is for that year to make sure you meet those requirements. I've had teachers reach out to me and say, hey, this is how I interpreted this. Does this meet what you're looking for? And I'm happy to give feedback on that. But honestly, not including the appendices loses quite a few points. And I'll pull up the handbook, and if we scroll to the bottom, there should be, I hope, our evaluation. So the media plan scorecard, we're teachers, you know how we grade things. So just take a look at this and make sure you're really meeting these things. A lot of the points, like I said, the description of the audience, the method of evaluation, those are worth 30 points total together, and those aren't always as detailed as we would like to see. And also being really clear with your strategic plan. So you've laid out your objectives saying you want to increase engagement on your Facebook post. Well, how do you do that? You ask questions on your Facebook post. You create polls for people to respond to. Maybe on Instagram, you do different Instagram stories that increase engagement and responses too. So how are you going to actually meet those objectives, and describing that is going to be super important to address as well. And then just making sure your budget is realistic and detailed. We give you a budget of $5,000, and the more thoughtful those budgets are, the more points I tend to see awarded to those.
Matt, any big advice that you have CDE wise overall?
For this particular event, no. I think you're hearing from the expert. From career development events, I would just really recommend that that as you prepare for events, teachers, and especially when you need to collect things to bring, like technology and other things, that they just get really organized and have students accountable for it as well. Also, this is a official dress recommended event. CDEs don't require official dress, but almost every team does do it, and so appearance is part of a lot of these events. So I recommend that the teacher works with students just to make sure that they have everything they need, and that also they're dressing as the teacher sees appropriate for this.
Thank you for bringing that up, Matt. And I do want to bring your attention. So Appendix 6 has the presentation scorecard, so you can see how students are going to be evaluated during that time. So all students, hopefully all members, participate equally within the presentation, but also those key elements of the media plan are going to be clearly communicated. So you can kind of go back to, like, what are those specific areas of that media plan that are bolded out in that outline is probably what I would use as an outline for your presentation.
Terrific. Colby, any last questions? Nope. Okay. Well, thank you, Taylor, for hosting this here and sharing your insight with us. We certainly do appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you to Matt also for adding some good stuff here.